So welcome back, everybody. We're in the Nefesh HaHaim, Sha'ar Gimel, Perek Zion, the seventh Perek. He's been talking about two aspects. An aspect of God that is, from his perspective, nothing's changed from before the Bria till after the creation. God is the same. God is unchanging. There's no distinction between up and down, front and back, left or right. It's all the same. But then there's no room for the Torah. There's no room for mutter v'aser, tahor v'tameh, or schar v'onesh. So, when he created the world, he gave us an opportunity to do something. So certainly from our perspective, there are major differences between right and wrong and good and evil and tahor v'tameh and so forth. And that's all from our perspective. And he's now going to try and take this distinction between from God's perspective versus our perspective and put that into a very fundamental principle of the Kabbalah. He's going to go deeply into the Tzimtzum, and another vocabulary word for this evening is called the Kav. And the Kav is like a line of light. This is abstract stuff. And before we even get started, I'm warning you, this is very esoteric, and that we're going to use concepts and really they're just themselves a mashal. But I want to mention something about the study of Kabbalah, which the Nefesh HaHaim is like an introduction to Kabbalah. And the Kabbalah means, of course, literally receipt, because when you go to the store, you get a Kabbalah. And so one of the things about Kabbalah is you have to sort of open your mind and open your heart to receive it, because what we're going to see, they're talking about stuff that you'd never come up with this on your own. And it's hard even to accept it or to understand it, what exactly it's talking about. And we can't totally get it. So you might say, okay, so what do I need this for? I can hear Steve's cynicism kicking in before I even get started. So I'm saying that in order to learn this and to learn the Kabbalah, you have to be a receiver. You have to open yourself up and receive it. And we won't master it. Obviously, we're not going to become big Kabbalists this evening. But we're going to learn about these two important vocabulary words, which are answering the basic question of how does the infinite and unlimited and perfect God interact with a finite world and put himself between the kruvim and care about our Torah and mitzvahs and everything. So that's the topic. So with that, we begin the text. The Elu Hashtei Bechinois Hanal that we've been talking about, Shemitzido Yitbarach, from God's side, Umitzidenu, from our side, Hein Atzman, this distinction itself and these two vantage points, that's the essence of Inyan Hatzimtzum V'Hakav, Hanizkar B'Divrei HaRizal. So Reb Chaim Volozhiner goes right to the source now, to the Arizal. And this word, which is, I think it's sort of famous already today, it's on the street, called Tzimtzum. And usually we would translate it as contraction, but we're going to see that he doesn't want to use the word contraction. We're going to use the word concealment. It's not in the Zohar so much. It doesn't come from the Zohar and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai as much as it comes from the Arizal. So like on college campus, when you take a course in Kabbalah, they call this the Lurianic Kabbalah. And of course, Reb Chaim Volozhiner is getting it from the Vilna Gaon, and this is well accepted today. But the person who really brought it out and who speaks about it at great length is the Arizal. So that's what we're talking about. So the Tzimtzum is concealment, and the Kav is this light. And I'm actually going to already show you now a diagram which appears. This diagram appears like in Kabbalistic Sefer Sfarim in different ways. And they're going to talk about shapes, and this is the Kav, this line, and they're going to make a big deal of the fact that it's like a radius and it's not a diameter. It does not go all the way through from one side to the other. It only goes halfway in. So this is sort of a certain intellectual model that we're going to use. And again, I'm going back to text. Where's my text? Okay. V'asher mevuar sham shemitzad hatzimtzum lo yitzdak bo shum shinui v'chiluk makom ma'ale umata panim ve'achor. So in terms of how to match up the things, the Nefesh HaHaim is saying the Tzimtzum is the concealment. That's from God's side. And with regard to that, there's no difference between up and down, front or back. But rak hashva'a gemura amitis, everything is all identical, exactly on the same level of Or Ein Sof Yidbarach. V'kol inyane hashinuyim v'chiluk hamakoymes. So all the distinctions which exist, and we know there's lots of distinctions which do exist, v'kol hashemois v'kinuyim kulam ne'emarim rak mitzad bechinas hakav. And again, the kav is this line, this pipeline of light that Hashem is putting into the Bria, let's say. And that's what he's corresponding to our perspective, okay? The kav versus the tzimtzum. And I'm already going to take a step back now and give you, this is sort of my own idea.
Wait, the kav is the pipeline of the light?
Yeah.
So is it going from the out from the external to the core, or from the core out? Yeah, you know, on that model you showed that looked like a 33 LP record with the needle. It core center to the external, or vice versa?
I'm going to read you now an excerpt from the Arizal that will explain. But just before I do that, I want to share an idea. We talk a lot about the 10 spheroids. And the base 10, we all grew up, base 10 is important, even if we didn't grow up with a metric system. And I just want to go back to the very beginning of creation, before creation, when God was all alone. And let's say there was Or Ein Sof, this infinite light. Before there was base 10, which let's say is the status quo, there was a binary Bria. There was a Bria of just ones and zeros, of just yes and no, of light and darkness, without any other distinctions. And to me, that's like a gradual a process that goes step by step. Hashem first, before he's going to create a complex universe with all the different things going on, he's going to make Tzimtzum v'kav, like yes and no, ones and zeros, on and off, like the way a computer works in machine language. So before there was Eser Spheros even, Hashem is making this concealment and putting through it some light, the Tzimtzum and the Kav. So I think of that as binary, and a binary Bria of on-off before then it develops into a 10-level system of 10 spheroids. So I think we're going to see some of that now. So I'm quoting from Rabbi Frankel. Well, right here, the Nefesh HaHaim says, "Ayin bereish sefer oitzros chayim umudat shekol divrei Arizal benistarot mashalhem." So I'm going to read you a passage, and you have to for sure understand it can't be literal. Upnimius inyan atzimtzum. I think this will be bakav. V'kavana al elu ashtei bechinos hanal shein be'etzem bechinos bechina achad ve'inyan achad legamrei. Okay, so here comes the passage. The Sefer Oitzros Chaim was written by Reb Chaim Vital, the primary student of the Arizal. Its content is a partial replication and duplication of various sections of the Eitz Chaim. The very beginning of it, in Sha'ar HaGilgulim, Drush Adam Kadmon, starts as follows. Know that at the beginning of everything, the only existence was pure light, called Ein Sof. And there was no empty space, but everything was light of the Ein Sof. When it arose in his sublime will to emanate the emanations for the reason that is known, that is to be called Rachum v'Chanun. For if there is no one in the world to receive mercy from him, how can he be called merciful? With the same applying to all his midot, in order for Hashem to sort of activate and to emanate and to express his midos, there has to be a recipient of his stuff. He then removed himself from the center of his light as the central focal point within it, and he removed himself there to the sides and the boundaries, resulting in the formation of an empty space. This was the first removal of the supernal emanator. This empty space was a perfect circle, which bounded the world of Atzilus and the other worlds, with the light of Ein Sof circumventing it in equal distribution. Now, when he removed himself, then through one point on the edge of this circle, light extended into the circle via one straight fine line, like one pipe of light drawing from the Ein Sof into this empty space and filling it. So we see that, Shimon, the light is coming from outside the circle towards the middle. That's how the description seems.
But if the light existed before everything else, then what is the Vayihi Or? He's not creating light. Is it a different light? Is it not? It's not the Or Ein Sof. It's something else.
It's a fair question, but I got to say we're not ready to put this into the psukim, and that I think this precedes the base of Bereshis. I think this is before that. Okay.
Pre-Torah history.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That it's the Aleph world.
Yes, the world of the invisible Aleph.
Mm-hmm.
But an empty space remained between the light within this empty space and between the light of the Ein Sof, which was circumventing the space, as mentioned, which was removed to the sides. And therefore, the bottom end of this line did not also reach the light of the Ein Sof, i.e., the straight line was only connected at one edge inside the circle, and it did not reach all the way to the other edge, but ended exactly in the middle of the circle. I call it a radius and not a diameter. For if it wasn't this way, the system would return to its former state, with the light within the empty space reconnecting with the light of the Ein Sof. That's a fascinating idea, that if the Kav would cross the whole circle and get to the other side, so then it would reunite with itself, and there would be Or Ein Sof that would dominate everything, and we'd be back to square one before the Tzimtzum. Okay? So that's the idea. Therefore, this light did not disseminate and extend within the area of the empty space. It just followed the path of the single straight line alone as mentioned, and the emanating light of the Ein Sof was drawn down by way of this line within the empty space of this circle, which is that which is emanated. And this is the only way in which the emanator is connected with that which is emanated. Even though all of Atzilut is circular and circumvented in equal distribution by Ein Sof, nevertheless, that place point which remains connected, from which the beginning of this line draws, that place is called Rosh Atzilut, and its supreme point, and all that which is drawn downwards is called the lower part of Atzilut. And as a result, there is a concept of up and down, of differentiated space within Atzilut. For if this were not the case, there would be no up and down, head and foot within Atzilut. So in order for the universe to have shape, to be able to make sense of anything and have any sort of relative position, there has to be like a certain side by which it's coming in, and then it stops in the middle. So that, again, this is very, very esoteric stuff, and I don't claim personally to understand it all. And it's clearly a mashal, because we're not talking about God and shapes and everything. But that's the Oitzres Chaim, and that's what the Nefesh HaHaim is introducing, the idea of the Kav and the Tzimtzum, and saying that they correspond to looking at creation from God's perspective and looking at it from our perspective. I would like to bring in another source now, and it's something I found online today, which is from Chabad, but they're actually quoting Rabbi Yoshe Ber, the Rav of Yeshiva University, and it's really beautiful stuff about what we can and what we can't understand. So, between revelation and concealment. It is with this distinction that Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik opens his classic work work of religious phenomenology, Halachic Man. When theoretical and scientific man peers into the cosmos, he is filled with one exceedingly powerful yearning, which is to search for clarity, understanding, for solutions and resolutions, to disperse the cloud of mystery, which hangs darkly over the order of phenomena and events. The homo religiosus, he coined this term, a religious man, he acts differently. He does not desire to transform the secrets embedded in creation into simple equations. On the contrary, homo religiosus is intrigued by the mystery of existence. He gives it a Latin name, the mysterium tremendum, and wants to emphasize that mystery. The cognitive act of homo religiosus is one of concealment and hiding. Okay? Concealment and hiding is essentially Tzimtzum. So in truth, as Reb Soloveitchik's extended discussion makes plain, these two attitudes can never be utterly separated into the scientific and religious domains. Illuminating knowledge and mysterious concealment are deeply enmeshed with one another, symbiotic counterpoints in the ongoing dance of human discovery and inquiry. The distinction between the scientist and the person of faith is instead a question of emphasis and focus. Okay, although there's some hard words here, I do want to read another paragraph or two because he gets to Tzimtzum Mamish. This dialectical interplay of revelation and concealment, that's really good. Revelation, because God is doing this. God on the one hand is revealing himself, on the other hand he's concealing himself. So that's really important. This dialectical interplay of revelation and concealment, according to Reb Soloveitchik, is not simply a matter of human subjectivity. The epistemological problem of what we can know about reality. Revelation and concealment are actually the most elemental functions of reality itself. Okay? This is the Kav in the Tzimtzum, essentially. In philosophical terms, this is described as a move from the ontological to the ontic. Now, these two words both mean like about being, ontological and the ontic. They're both about being. That is, from the different way that people engage with existence and theorize about it to the elemental substance of existence itself. So it's how we perceive existence versus existence itself, which is really what the Nefesh HaHaim is talking about from God's perspective, which is existence, versus our perspective, which is the way we perceive existence. That's the ontic and the ontological. The mind sways ontologically between knowing reality and being mystified by it, because reality sways ontically between obligingly showing itself and modestly hiding itself. There's revelation and concealment. As Rav Soloveitchik succinctly puts it, the ontological dualism is a reflection of the ontic dualism, meaning our perception of this dialectic is because reality is really comprised of revelation and concealment. The ontic dualism described here, Reb Soloveitchik later acknowledges, is rooted in the concept of Tzimtzum, as interpreted in the teachings of Chabad Hasidism specifically. The attribute of Tzimtzum. So what is Tzimtzum? It expresses itself in two ideas, concealment and disclosure. On the one hand, God sustains the cosmos through concealing and hiding his glory. For who can withstand the splendor of his excellence when he comes forth to overawe the earth? If God would let himself be known in his fullness, there'd be no room for you and me or for anything else to exist. He would totally overwhelm us. On the other hand, the Almighty gives life to and sustains all existence through a certain disclosure of his glory, for he is the root and source of reality. So I think, again, although there were some hard words there and it was very esoteric, I think that captures a lot of the essence of what we're talking about here in the Nefesh HaHaim, about revelation and concealment. So we continue in the text. Ki bi'ur milat tzimtzum. So now the Nefesh HaHaim is going to define his term tzimtzum. The meaning of this word tzimtzum kan, eino lashon siluk, והעתק ממקום למקום, להתכנס ולהתחבר עצמו אל עצמו כביכול. This is not withdrawal or entering into oneself, להמציא מקום פנוי, in order to, like, Hashem would constrict himself to create free space, an open space.
I thought that's really a major aspect of Tzimtzum, when he says, let there be a zebra, he'll create a zebra and it'll keep creating zebras, 12 billion of them until, he says, die, stop, Tzimtzum, stop. So he's got to constrict himself, or else whatever he creates just goes on ad infinitum. So I thought it is a pulling back.
But what we're going to see, it's not Hashem constricting, it's merely him concealing, covering, okay? That's the nuance that the Nefesh HaHaim is getting at. That he starts with what it's not. It is not Lashon Siluk ve'atak mimakom lemakom litkanet litchaber atzmo el atzmo kaviyachol amtzi makom panui chas v'shalom, because God really is everywhere. Ela ki'inyan she'amru bebereshis rabba. He quotes two midrashim now, and I have them both up on the screen. This one is Tzimtzum paneha v'lo ra'ata hamelech. And this is really important, I think, that Reb Chaim Volozhin did really good work here in going through the rabbinic literature and finding the usage of Tzimtzum that he wanted to bring out. And I think it's really meaningful, these midrashic usages. The story here is about Sarah and Hagar. And Hagar, as you know, she was able to see angels, and an angel came to her by the well, and she talks about that, Be'er L'chai Ro'i, and, which is pretty surprising. Hagar was a shifcha, she was Paro's daughter from a concubine, but she's, in a sense, she's a lowly person, and yet she comes to witness and to have an interaction with an angel, which is a pretty big deal. So she says here, Lo dai shenizkakti im gvirti lirot hamalach. Not only did I get to see an angel when I was with Sarah Imenu, who's a really big person, ela shafilu gvirti shaita imi lo ra'ata. But even Sarah was with, he didn't see, and I saw. Davar acher, lo dai shenizkakti im gvirti ela beini lebein atzmi. I was zoichet to see a malach when I was all by myself. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, Mashal matrona. There's a mashal here to an important woman, a matron. Sha'amar la hamelech avri lefanai. The king says to this queen figure, I want you to sort of walk in front of me. I want you to ceremoniously pass before me. Avra lefanav v'haita mistamechet al shifchata. The queen passes before the king in this sort of audience, and she is leaning on her maidservant. B'tzimtzuma paneha v'lo ra'ata hamelech v'shifcha ra'ata. So look carefully at the language. What did the queen do? The queen tzimtzuma paneha, which I think we should translate as she covered her face. Out of respect for the king, she covered her face, and she did not see the king because her face was covered. I mean, she was there and she was seen, but she didn't see because he tzimtzema paneha, and yet her shifcha did see. Okay, so there's this two level of reality going on here between Sarah and Hagar, that the high level lady is covering herself and not seeing, and the lower shifcha is seeing. And so the Nefesh HaHaim is citing this midrash of what does tzimtzuma mean. It does not mean here to constrict or to remove oneself. It means to cover oneself. And therefore she is not, seeing the king, but the king is seen by the shifcha. So that's the first citation of the Nefesh HaHaim. He cites now a second one from Eicha Rabasi, and here's another language of Tzimtzum. Mashal melech sheka'as al matrona. The king is angry this time with his queen. V'dechafa v'hotzi'ah chutz lepalterin. He throws her out of the palace. What does she do? Halcha v'tzimtzuma paneha achar ha'amud. Nimtza hamelech over v'ro'eh ota. Okay? Here she covers herself, her face, and she also hides behind the pillar. But the king goes by and does see her. So in both cases that the Midrash uses the Lashon Tzimtzum, it uses it regarding the feminine, like the Shechina or something, the queen figure. She covers her face, but the king still sees her. She's still there. She's just covered. Okay? So that's what the Nefesh HaHaim is getting at. The meaning of the word Tzimtzum here does not mean removal or constriction. Rather, it means the Aniya Gever Halcha v'Tzimtzuma Paneh Achar Amud shepirusho sham lashon hester v'kisui. It means to hide or conceal and to cover. And the Aruch also says that about Tzimtzum. V'chein milat Tzimtzum hainu hester v'kisui. The meaning is not constriction, but rather, I would say, concealment, hidden and covered. Okay, so what does that mean? V'kavana she'achduso yizbarach shmo b'vchinas atzmuso hamemale kol almin hu mitzumtzam. Hashem's oneness, his absolute unity and indivisibility of, God's himself, atzmuso, which fills everything, is concealed and covered. Mitzumtzamu mustarmi hasagatenu. We can't perceive it. The Ke'inyan achenata kel mistater. A pasuk in Yeshaya refers to God as kel mistater. Benigla kvoid Hashem beru kol basar yachtav ki pi Hashem diber. Where's the kel mistater? I don't know. Okay. Fine. That didn't pull up. Let's see. Show 15. Okay, that's better. Here we go. Achein ata el mistater Elohei Yisrael Moshiach. You are indeed a God who hides in concealment, O God of Israel, who brings victory. So here it is, Kel mistater. There's one of the Zmiros on Shalosh Yudish that's Kel mistater. God is hiding. He's concealed. He's concealing himself. Ve'hasagatenu ma she'anachnu masigim. Mitziat hishtalshelut olamot ze lemala mizeh bevchinas shonim mechanim anachnu. Mechanim anachnu b'shem kav. Shu ke'ein kav hamishtalshel. So what we can perceive, and we perceive many different olamos of God revealing himself through one world beneath another, that's called the kav, which is like a beam of light, a ray of light, that's a good word they use, a ray. V'zema shekasav Arizal, shemitzad tzimtzum, hainu mitzad atzmus achduso yizbarach, shebe'oilamo is hamale eskol, that fills everything, asher af sheme'itanu hu mitzumtzam mustar. From our perspective, it's concealed and covered. Aval bechinas atzmuso lo yitzdak inyan malav mata. But from God's perspective, there's no such thing as above and below. Only rak mitzad akav, hainu mitzad hasagatenu. Only from our perspective, there's relative space. Shanachnu mitzidenu masagim seder ha'olamo is derech hishtalshelus ke'ein kav. Yitzdak mitzidenu maleu mata. From our perspective, there are qualities of above and of below. V'af gam zot shemitzad tzimtzum hainu af shehu yizbarach shmo tzimtzem v'histir me'asagatenu or atzmus achduso amamale kol im kol ze lo yitzdak bo malu mata af mitzad asagatenu im hayinu masigim hester shave behashva'a gemura v'kol ha'mekoymis ke'inyan igul hamakif shelo yitzdak bo malu mata. He talks now about a circle. A perfect circle really doesn't have a top or a bottom. But once you put a line through the circle, Now you can identify where the top and the bottom is. So that's sort of the role of the kav, of being a line through the circle. Hainu sheme'achar shegazor v'yitzoynu yizbarach, shegam achar atzimtzum ve'hester, eina hester shaveh lahasagatenu v'kol ha'mekoymis b'shaveh. We perceive that God reveals and conceals himself on different levels in different places. Like the Beis HaMikdash is a very holy place, and the Beis HaKvaros is not. ואנחנו משיגים השגות שונים בחילוק בחינות פרטים, דרך השתלשלות כאין קו אור, like a ray of light, המאיר השגתנו, להשיג התגלות אורו יזברך, ועולמוס בכויכויס חלוקים, שכל עולם בכויח היוסר עליון, the higher, the world, hisgalus oiro heloki bo yoter. The higher the place that we think about, the greater the divine light that is revealed there. V'gam hasagatenu hisgalus oiro yizbarach bezeh ha'olam, hu gam ken bevchino madregos shoinim b'mekoymes chalukim. In this world too, there's many different levels of revelation. K'moshe manu razal. We say a Mishnah, Eser Kedusho saying, Eretz Yisrael is the holy land. It's holier than all the other lands. And the Beis HaMikdash is holier than Yerushalayim, and Yerushalayim is holier than the other cities. So there's 10 levels of Kedusha. There are Gimel Machanois, Mikudashois, Zu Lemala Mizu, Be'erech Kedushatam, as Mitzad Kav or Hasagatenu, from this ray of light that is our perspective on God and reality, his galus oiro yisbarach, hu sheyitztakbo malo mata, v'kol chiluke amekoymis. This is how we differentiate between above and below, front and back, and all the distinctions which the Torah calls on us to make. V'abechino shoinim miprateim u'muvuarim b'divrei Arizal, v'kein inyan amikraot. We have psukim like that which describe God as Kel Elyon, the God on high. Elokeinu b'shamayim, Yoshev b'shamayim, there's many psukim like that. That all has to do with the kav, this ray of light that Hashem pierced into the tzimtzum, as it were. Shemitzad hasagatenu yitzdak lomer shemakom zen nikar yoiser, gam etzleinu his galus or elokuso yisbarach shmo, nibikoyma acher, she's galus or yisbarach, hu b'v'chinat hester. There's places where Hashem's concealment is greater than his light. The Kinyan Shemer Yaakov Avinu, Alav Shalom, Ve'amdo al Makom HaMikdash, Kamo Shekiblu Razal, Ein Zeh Ki Im Beit Elokim, B'zeh Sha'ar Shamayim. So Yaakov Avinu perceived from his perspective that he was in a holy place. Ratzeloimar, Shebezeh HaMakom, Musag Gam Lahasagat HaAdam, She'ein bo rak his galus or elokuso yizbarach levad. He was at a holy place, recognizing that the Makom HaMikdash is special and unique. And he continues. Let's see how much he goes. Okay, there's another paragraph here. I'm going to go for it. V'zeu inyan hachalal umakam panui shehizkir zal v'sheklal inyan Hatzimtzum hayal hizgalos hakelim, hainu shegazor ritzoyno mitama kamusito yizbarach lahastir or achdus hatzmuso yizbarach bezeh makom shiur amidas haoilamois ve'abriois kulam hester atzum lahamtzi al yedei ze inyan nifle kazeh sheyisroya ve'yusag mitzius oilamos ve'koichois ein mispar derech hadragavi shtalshalut. Irbahem his galus aris barak or dak b'shira v'diktuk atzum v'derech masachim ein kates. This is the act of creation of God concealing his light into many layers and many, he calls them masks, masachim, and b'shir medugdak in just the right amount, so that there's many levels of oilamois and forces, innumerable, through a gradual increase in concealment of the divine light, which makes it therefore perceptible to human understanding. ועד שיוכלו להימצא דרך השתלשלות ומסכים עצומים גם מקוימס אשר אינם טהורים v'kochot hatum'ah v'hara v'aklipois v'shefel hamadregot hatachtonim. So this process of hishtalshalut, there's an English word concatenation, which is like a chain here of energy of Hashem's divine light coming down, down, down into this world and in through innumerable worlds with more and more concealment. So there's perceived less divinity, less divine light, more, I'll call it empty space, until we get to places that are not even holy places. They're places of klipois and tuma and evil, b'shefel madrigot tachtonot, at the bottom levels. So we've gone all the way from the very top of Or Ein Sof, of unending divine light, and we've traveled down through innumerable worlds into dark places. V'nireh umizdame ki'ilu chas v'shalom. And when you look at those dark places that are evil, it looks like an empty vacuum. Chalal panui me'or achdus atzmuso yizbarach shmo. We said this is a God-forsaken place. What does it mean, a God-forsaken place? There's no God-forsaken place, but it looks like that to our perception. It looks dark and evil, as if God is not present there. Ve'eina nachnu masigim rak rishima daka mu'etes ve'or mu'at ke'ein kav davar mashal. This is another Kabbalistic term called the Rishima. And the Rishima has to do with like residual Kedusha. After Hashem concealed himself, there's a little bit of perceptible residual Kedusha. He calls it Or Muat, like this kav, this ray of light. Ad shebehigia derech seder hadragot umasachim harabim ela koichos tachtoinim koichos hatuma ve'ara. Ein is galus oiri is barak nikar klal hasagatenu. We don't see God's light there. V'zema shekasu sham she'akav ha'or lo higia ad ktsei hatachton v'lo nidbak betachtiso. This goes back to the picture I showed you at the beginning, and he's talking about the fact that the light does not go all the way through the circle, but it stops in the middle. And so he's now talking about that. She'akav ha'or lo higia ad ktsei hatachton v'lo nidbak b'tachtito v'al yedei zeh yimtza bechinos mala umata. So there's a top of a circle and the bottom of the circle. Ayin sham v'hu mevu'ar lemevin. And that is mevu'ar lemevin. Okay, I think you have one more, a little bit more here. Tzimtzum ve'akav kol echad. Okay, that's really hard. That to say that the Tzimtzum and the Kav are really one thing. Ratzaloimer im ki vadai shegam b'makom kol ha'olamois ve'abruim hakol male gam ata rak hatzmuso yizbarach shmo. There's a concealment of his light, but he's really still there. Levad kikoidim abriya, because nothing's really changed before or after the creation. Omnam hu bebechinas tzimtzum, it's covered. Hainu bebechinas hester, levad, mufla, umechuse, mehasagatenu, it's covered from our perception. Kedei shal yedei zeh tzimtzum vehester, te kol hasagatenu es oilamos derech hishtalshus vehamshachas hisgalus ori yizbarach behem beseder hadraga levad ke'ein kav derech mashal kanal. Yes, Shimon.
No, just a quick connectivity that to the theme of Purim, of the Hester Panim, but we know he's there, and also to our relevant parshiot, like we just read, I think it was the Maftir, that here we have the Mishkan, like the holiest piece of real estate, that we know on earth at the time, and yet the Maftir talks about that it's mu'unan, it's Hashem, it's all cloudy and it's all fog, but we know the light, we know Hashem is there, but he's behind the cloud, he's behind the curtain, as so to speak.
Man behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Okay, good. We're talking about revelation and concealment, and there's great concealment. And even in the Mishkan, God is revealing himself but concealing himself. So there's always this duality and this tension between revelation and concealment. So yes, I agree with that. And certainly Purim is a celebration of God revealing himself within the Hester Panim of the destruction of the temple. There's no Beis HaMikdash in the time of the Gzeira of Haman. He's ready to destroy the whole Jewish people. But God is there in a really hidden way. He's behind the lottery that Haman makes, that he's going to save the Jewish people in Adar. It's the month that Moshe Rabbeinu was born in, and so forth. And so even when God is totally hidden, like his name is not in the Megillah, the name of God is not mentioned in Megillah, but he's really still there. So that's a great example of the meaning of Tzimtzum, according to the Nefesh HaHaim, that it's not that he's constricted himself, he's merely covered. He's concealed.
So instead of the light, instead of this channel of light, we have nitzutzim, we have sparks here and there.
Yeah. So last couple of lines for this evening. V'zeh shekasu, he quotes the Sha'ar Gulim, Yoshar, Sha'akav chut ha'or lo nimshak v'nispashet tekef ad lamata, el la'at la'at. Ratzaloymar, derech hadragot rabot me'od b'shir medukdak, kafi hatzorech lasagatenu, inyan ha'olamois v'seder hadragatam, v'amevin yavin, v'alpiza midaito, kol shoyrish ha'inyan ha'muvuar sham. And he now closes by saying, Ki efshar lefaret v'lahazbir hetev kol dvarav zal sham. I'm not allowed to tell you anymore. So he took us to a pretty high place, really esoteric discussion. I thank you for your patience for it.
He's being Tzimtzum himself.
He's Tzimtzum, his warrior. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for being with me.
Thank you.
Next week we'll be off for Purim. See you in 2 weeks, Besat Shem. Okay.
Thank you. Yeshkach.